Coming up today on the Nick Craig Show, as America approaches its 250th birthday, some on the political left cannot put their partisanship aside. They are dropping out of America 250 events all across the United States. We'll talk about the insanity coming up. And a good Tuesday morning to you. Welcome into the Nick Craig Show, streaming live this morning on YouTube, Rumble, X, and Facebook. Don't forget that you can take the Nick Craig Show with you 24/7 on demand. It's real simple and totally free. Just search for the Nick Craig Show in your favorite podcast app. You can also listen online by visiting the website nickcraig.com. Our show this morning is brought to you by the Law Group here in Wilmington. For any legal questions, challenges, concerns, issues you may be having, visit the Law Group online, lawgroupnc.com, or give them a call, 910-251-6088. We'll hear more from them coming up a little bit later on in the program this morning. Have you been following any of the nonsense that's going on with the America 250 event, the big America 250 event that's taking place in Washington, D.C., and events that are taking place over the next couple of months? It's been brewing in the news over the last couple of days, and it's just insanity. But let's just lay the groundwork as to where we are with everything going on. Coming up on July the 4th of this year, America will be celebrating its 250th anniversary. It is not accurate to say that this is a once-in-a-lifetime event. It is more accurate to say this is a once-in-forever event, as there will never again in the future be a 250th anniversary for the United States of America. There will be others. There'll be a 251st, a 300th, a 350, hopefully if we can hold on to it for that period of time. But there will never again be a 250th anniversary of the founding of the greatest nation that has ever existed in human history. That will not happen again. There will be no remakes. There will be no rain dates, no rain checks. None of that will happen. This is a once ever happening event. Okay, let's make sure we've got that out of the way. You're never going to have another opportunity. And it is so incredibly unfortunate to watch individuals, predominantly those on the political left, surprise, surprise, that are so caught up in their politics, that are so caught up in their ideology, that they cannot put that aside even for a couple of days to bring the nation together. The irony in all of this is the fact that you are constantly hearing from those on the political left that we need to come together as a nation, that we need to put our differences aside, that we need to, fight for America, we need to restore America. All of these things, again, all levied at not only Donald Trump, but Republicans as a whole. Here is a golden opportunity to say, you know what? We are not going to allow partisan politics to consume an event. We are not going to allow our own political persuasions, our own political opinions to get in the way of what should be an incredible time. All, not just July 4th itself, but all of the events leading up to it, including the Great American State Fair, which is set to begin coming up here later on in the month of June. I think it's the late June, 25th, 26th, something like that from what I was reading. Coming up just a couple of weeks ahead of July the 4th. This should not be a time where we are worrying about partisan politics. But we know, and we've documented this in great detail here on the Nick Craig Show, that the Democrats, their political persuasion, their political ideology is a religion. It is all-consuming, 24/7, 365, from the second that they open their eyes in the morning till the second that they fall asleep. It is all-consuming. And with that, they are seemingly incapable, at least from what I've been seeing over the last couple of days, they are incapable of putting that aside even for a short period of time because Donald Trump is the president of the United States. That is the sad reality that we are facing. That is the sad situation that is existing right now, because Donald Trump is in the Oval Office. He will, in fact, I know this is a sad thing for many on the left to hear, he will, in fact, be in the Oval Office for July the 4th. He will be in the Oval Office for the big FIFA matches coming to the United States. He will be in the Oval Office for the Olympics in Los Angeles. He will be for all of these major events. And as you would expect, especially for the any sort of America 250 event that's going to be going on, you would hope, at least I would, that the administration, regardless of whether it's a Democrat administration or a Republican administration, would be heavily involved in what's going on. We are talking about the leader of the United States. We are talking about the duly elected president of the U.S., whether that is a Democrat or a Republican. If Kamala Harris was in the Oval Office right now, fortunately, she's not. If she was, I would be hopeful that her and her administration would be actively involved in what's going on. It would be weird. It would be bizarre. It would be very abnormal for the president of the United States to not be involved in the 250th anniversary, the 250th birthday of the founding of said nation in which they preside over. I mean, is that a crazy statement to make? Am I off my rocker here that the president would be involved in the 250th anniversary of the nation in which they are the president? Is this really that crazy? Am I that out to lunch on this issue? Doesn't seem crazy at all. It seems totally logical. It seems like exactly what you would expect. So if you haven't been following this over the last couple of days, the Great American State Fair, which is set to begin on June the 25th, over at the National Mall, in which there's been a lot of renovations going on. Another issue in which Democrats were freaking out about is that the president and private contractors and presumably some level of government employees have been doing a lot of work to get the National Mall in tip-top shape, making sure that everything looks good. It is a good representation of the United States. They announced a series of concerts that were taking place during the Great American State Fair, and listed a number of musical acts that were set to perform. They included artists like Morris Day and the Time, the Commodores, Bret Michaels, the artist Maria McBride. All of them were set to be involved throughout this period of time at the Great American State Fair in a series of concerts. Everybody, most people, I shouldn't say everybody, most people enjoy live music. And when you've got big groups together, it is pretty typical that you have some sort of musical act, some sort of musical performance. And so 2 days after it was announced that these groups would be part of this Great American State Fair, many of these musicians, and it's obvious where their political persuasions are based on what they have said, have decided, after agreeing to perform, that they're all of a sudden backing out of this, dropping out of this, and their rationale is that the president is going to be, quote unquote, involved, that the president is going to be at some of these events. As I just stated minutes ago, you're surprised, you're shocked that the president of the United States is going to be involved in the Great American State Fair, which is in larger part of America's 250th anniversary and birthday celebration that is going to be happening all over the United States? You're really shocked by this? You are now having to quickly take to social media to comment on this situation? Have you been living under a rock? Did you really believe that the president and members of his administration, his cabinet officials, other elected officials throughout government, both Democrats and Republicans, weren't going to be heavily involved in this? That they weren't going to make appearances? That there may not have been, that there may be some speeches and comments from these individuals? Really? I guess maybe some of these individuals are more insulated from what's going on across the United States than I thought. Because when I was reading through this over the last couple of days, things really kind of kicked off in the negative on this over the weekend. I just found myself shocked that these individuals were surprised that President Donald Trump was set to be involved. So we're talking about a couple of the musical acts, including the Commodores, Bret Michaels, Morris Day, and The Time, all of which have decided that they are going to now cancel. They have all stated in some way, shape, or form that they are going to withdraw from the musical lineup as part of the Great American State Fair, which is set to kick off in Washington, D.C., in and around the in and around the National Mall on June the 25th, with one of the performers, McBride, explaining why she decided not to be part of the fair, reading this over from NPR, writing in a social media post that she was presented with an opportunity to perform at a nonpartisan event, but that turned out to be misleading. This is what she wrote on a post on social media. In my mind, I thought this was a great way to celebrate the states and also bring people together in the way that only music can. I saw it as just a bigger version of so many state fairs that I have performed at over the years, celebrating community and what makes each state special. Yesterday, things started changing, and what we were told, in fact, is not what is happening. Now, let's be perfectly clear about this, because Miss McBride wants to claim that she has performed at so many state fairs over the years. I guess she's never been to any state fairs where, maybe let's try to think here. Who is the top person in a state? Yes. The governor, who typically attends and in many cases speaks at a state fair. At the end of the day, it is a state fair. You see county fairs that happen, oftentimes attended to and comments every once in a while by elected officials in said area. This is not and should not be a surprise. But because Donald Trump is involved, and his level of involvement remains, at least from what we know publicly, relatively unknown at this period of time. But because Donald Trump is involved, all of these artists who, again, claim, we just want to bring people together. Okay, well then, why don't you use this as an opportunity to bring people together? Why don't you use this as an opportunity to say, you know what? I may have disagreements, which, by the way, is totally fine, totally normal, and totally respectable. Why don't you say, I have my disagreements with the president. I have my disagreements with this administration. And with that, I am going to get up on a stage and perform my musical act, whatever it might be, in whatever way it might be. And I'm going to do that. What a novel concept. What a totally rational, reasonable idea. And see, this goes into the larger point that Democrats preach all of this stuff, right? Democrats are constantly talking about bringing people together and all this kumbaya, this, that, and the other. Then, faced with the opportunity, given the chance to truly act on said words, what do? Well, they run for the hills. They say, too much for me. Too controversial for me. I can't do this. I have to get out of this because I can't afford to tick off the left-wing mob who will be coming after me with pitchforks after I perform at an America 250 event taking place in Washington, D.C. This comes back and ties in very nicely with the program that we did yesterday, talking about the riots and protests that have been taking place in Newark, New Jersey, and how it has put Democrats in this totally unwinnable situation in which they can't win because the radical progressives that have attempted to take control of their party will give on no issue. And so, just as we mentioned yesterday, not to rehash the entire show, I'll note if you missed it, you can check it out in your favorite podcast app or head on over to the website, nickcraig.com, and listen to Monday's program. But one of the large things that we talked about was how Democrats have now flipped on the New Jersey governor because she stated publicly there are out-of-town agitators coming to New Jersey, coming to Newark to stand outside of this ICE detention facility and hurl rocks, frozen water bottles, bricks, and shoot fireworks at law enforcement. For simply making that statement, she turned this radical, progressive, violent, no surprise there, crowd against her. You cannot appease the left. And I would suspect that this is in part why so many of these musical acts, so many of these musical groups, now that it has been found out that the president will be attending and maybe speaking, not while they're playing, but throughout the entirety of this event, now they have decided that they're going to withdraw. They're going to pull the plug. Great comment coming in on the program. Most of the musicians you mentioned need the money. A few of them are probably ticked off to lose the work. Also noting that the artists themselves don't make some of these decisions. It's their managers and publicists and their handlers. That is a great point as well, depending on who these groups are signed with, who is managing them and responsible for booking their gigs. It's just a miserable situation. Now, some, however, have stood up against this and said, no, we're not going to play part in this. Vanilla Ice, who I've got a clip of coming up, he was on CNN yesterday, said he would not drop out of the event, writing in part on social media, "This is not a political platform. This is celebrating America's birthday." Wow. What a radical comment from Vanilla Ice. What a wild thing to say. This is not a political event. This is celebrating America's birthday. I'll take you back to something I said just a little bit ago. The Democrats and their political ideology is a religion. And so when somebody like Vanilla Ice or anybody else says, this is not political, this is not a political platform, they can't understand that because their politics are all consuming. It is every facet of their life. 24/7. 365. It is all politics. So they cannot begin to wrap their heads around the concept that, yes, the President of the United States, the nation in which is celebrating its 250th birthday, may attend, may be involved in some part in an event in Washington, D.C., literally right in the place where he lives and does business in Washington, where he might be involved. But because their politics are all consuming, because they eat, breathe, and sleep their political ideology and their political agenda, they can't come to this realization or rationalization that just because the president is involved does not mean that this is going to be some hyper-partisan event. This is Trump derangement syndrome, and in larger part, Republican derangement syndrome on full public display. It is miserable that these individuals cannot get over their own politics to celebrate 250 years worth of the greatest nation that has ever existed. The same nation that made some of these individuals incredibly wealthy. That is a sad sign of where the United States is right now. I'll have more on this coming up in just a couple of minutes, including an interesting article I caught over at Semaphore Magazine by their co-founder and editor-in-chief, Ben Smith, as he talked to a Democrat strategist about what's going on here. We'll also hear from Vanilla Ice himself. He was on CNN yesterday being asked about this. This was making the news cycle throughout the day yesterday as well. We'll get into all of that coming up here in just a couple of minutes. But before that, I want to tell you about the law group here in Wilmington. Thank them for their continued support here of the Nick Craig Show, and remind you that when legal challenges or questions, and plenty of times you may have a legal question arise, make sure you put your trust in the law group right here in Wilmington. Going all the way back to 2003, Melissa Gott and the experienced group over at the Law Group have provided high-quality, affordable legal services across the eastern half of our state. Whether you're facing a divorce, navigating a real estate transaction, need a strong defense, or have any legal questions or concerns, the Law Group will have your back. Their dedicated team will ensure that your questions are answered and issues, if there are any, are resolved as quickly as possible. Great news, folks. They're located in downtown Wilmington. They're just a phone call away at 910-251-6088, or you can visit them online at lawgroupnc.com. That's 910-251-6088, or online lawgroupnc.com. It's the Law Group. Experience and dedication you can rely on. Cannot tell you how much we appreciate Melissa Gott, her continued support, and giving me the ability to be on here each and every weekday morning, if you join us live or after the fact, to produce the Nick Craig Show. Thanks to Melissa Gott and the Law Group. All right, quick break. More on the freak out, the public freak out that's happening over the 250th anniversary of the United States coming up after this, as the Nick Craig Show continues, streaming live this morning, as always, YouTube, Rumble, X, Facebook, and available 24/7 wherever you get your podcasts. Welcome back to the Nick Craig Show. Thanks for spending some time with us here on this Tuesday. Quick reminder, coming up tomorrow night, that is Wednesday, June the 3rd, we'll be hosting what is our May Patreon hangout for those that support the show over at patreon.com/Nick Craig. A week late on this. Sorry, it was busy over the last couple of weeks. That'll be taking place Wednesday, June the 3rd, 7 p.m. For those that have not joined one of these before, we jump on a Zoom call for a couple of hours, chat about all of the news, topics, issues, and conversations of the day. That takes place for those that are supporters of the show over at patreon.com/Nick Craig. For as little as $5 a month, you can get access to that and our daily show notes. Patreon.com/Nick Craig. We'll have two coming up in the month of June, one tomorrow night, the other taking place later on this month. Look forward to chatting with everybody tomorrow night. You can find the link as well over at nickcraig.com. All right, we're talking about the freak out that is happening, the panic that is happening as it relates to a series of America 250 events that are set to take place not only in Washington, D.C., but many states, many communities getting heavily involved in the 250th anniversary, the 250th birthday of the United States of America. Over the last couple of days, we have learned that many musicians who were set to perform during what is being called the Great American State Fair taking place at the National Mall in Washington, D.C. It starts on June the 25th. These musicians have decided that some of them have decided they are going to pull out of the event, withdraw from the event, because they said they were promised that this would be a nonpartisan event, which, by the way, was all I understood to be until these musical acts started to pull out. Now, the president has come out. He took to social media over the weekend and said, you know what? All of these individuals are going to back out. That's fine. He says, that's okay. I'm going to just turn it into a political rally. If you guys are going to claim that this is going to be some hyper-partisan event, then that's fine. He said, that's fine. He called the musicians third rate and said that he's decided he will give a speech with a rally that will be taking place at the event instead. So I guess maybe they got what they wanted, because there was no indication beforehand, at least from what I've been able to find, what I've been able to read and all of the various headlines, and I've looked at left-wing publications and more right-leaning publications as well. I've looked across the spectrum to see like what's going on here, and I could not find anything before these musical performers announced late last week and throughout the weekend that they were going to withdraw from the event. I saw nothing. I read nothing. There was nothing publicly that I could see that indicated to me that this event was going to be hyper-political, that there was going to be any partisan nature at all. The president himself has now come out after the fact and said, hey, you guys want to claim that this is what I'm doing, then to hell with it. I'll just turn it into a political rally. I'll turn it into a political event. If that's what you're claiming is going to happen anyway, then let me be guilty of the crime. If you're going to accuse me of it, let me be guilty of it. And that's what the president has done to up to this point. So Vanilla Ice, one of the individuals who is set to perform and has decided he is going to stick through on this, and said in a statement on social media, you know, this is not political. This is celebrating the 250th anniversary of the United States. He was invited on CNN yesterday to talk about this, as CNN and all of these other left-wing media outlets over the last couple of days have now used this as Donald Trump is ruining everything. Donald Trump is causing total chaos and making everything awful, as always. I know, surprise, surprise, you haven't been hearing that for the last decade. So Vanilla Ice was on CNN yesterday being asked about some of his colleagues in the music industry deciding to withdraw from the event. This is what he had to say on CNN yesterday.
Even though we've heard that from the president, when so many other performers are deciding not to.
I don't know. I can only speak for myself, and I'm proud to be an American. I was born here and raised here, and this is my country, and I don't like anybody telling me I really can't be proud of it. And this is a huge honor to play the birthday. It's once in a lifetime, 250. So I'm honored, and I just, I respect everybody else. I know there's a lot of tension everywhere. This whole world is like a snow globe, but it shouldn't be that. And music is here to bring people together, man. And, it shouldn't be that this music is dragged into politics. It's not fair. I don't even vote. I'm not a politician. I don't have the first thing to say about how to run a country or do anything like that. I think this is a huge honor. And I'm wanting to celebrate the country I was born and raised in, man. And we didn't take things so serious back in the 90s. I feel sorry for these kids today, man. I have kids, so I know, and it's a different world. I mean, these computers have kind of ruined the world, if you ask me. I think we should all go back to the 90s and the 80s when it was just, having fun and Z Cavricis, and you just go out and you rip your back seat and you put subwoofers in and you enjoy going to Blockbuster. That's all we're doing is celebrating the birthday of our country. What's the big deal here? And as far as entertainers, I don't think it's fair to put any of us on a pedestal like that as far as politics goes, because, it shouldn't matter. We're just here to play. I'd play for anybody. So it's, I go.
He said, I'd play for anybody. And, obviously, as an individual performer, as an individual musician. You are allowed to, and you, I would argue, should have an opinion on things that are going on. I don't hate you for having an opinion. I don't despise you for having an opinion. You're allowed to have that opinion. And if that is one that supports the president of the United States currently, good for you. If that's one that does not support the current president of the United States, same comment. Good for you. You're allowed to have that opinion. Vanilla Ice in this clip said a couple of interesting things. One, I don't vote. I don't know if he meant he doesn't vote, or I think then he transitioned into, I don't have a say in like what's going on with government. I don't know if he was saying whether he's not an elected official or something like that. I don't know if Vanilla Ice votes. I don't particularly care. But he said some of the same things that we heard from some of these same musicians that have decided to withdraw from the event, is that music is supposed to bring people together. And it is. I would argue that, like many other things, it should bring people together. That's why it is so unfortunate to see the reaction that we have seen over the last couple of days with these musical performers, with these musical acts withdrawing, leaving this event. Interior Secretary Doug Burgum, who is heavily involved in the planning of the celebration on Sunday, just a couple of days or during this period when many of these musicians were dropping out of the event, stated once again that the event is, quote, nonpartisan. He was on CNN's State of the Union program, their Sunday big political roundup show, and said, quote, "It's not about the transparency of the donors," when asked if the donations should become public, saying this is about Americans celebrating the 250th anniversary in a nonpartisan way. So here is the guy who is heavily involved in the process, Interior Secretary Doug Burgum. Yes, I know. He is a cabinet secretary. He is with the Trump administration. He is saying, yeah, we're trying to make this as nonpartisan of an event as possible. But I would argue in this case, it is those on the left now that have brought this into a partisan category. You can go, and I'm reading this article, the one I've got pulled up in front of me right now, is from NPR, which I think is fair to say is a more left-leaning news outlet. This is one of many that I've read through, none of which, and I stated this a little bit ago, none of which have come forward and claimed what sort of evidence all of these musicians were given, what sort of information they were told to indicate to them that this was all of a sudden going to become this crazy, hyper-partisan political event before they decided to withdraw. The president is threatening that now. The president on social media over the weekend now is saying, you know what? For all these performers, if you guys want to back out and claim that this is going to be some crazy partisan event, I'll give it to you. I'm going to give a major rally-like speech at this event if that's what you want. I mean, there's not even any evidence that I can point to, and I think this is an important part of the discussion and conversation. There is no evidence that I can point to at all that I've seen published anywhere that indicates how this event was originally pitched to them versus how it is now being run. Outside of the fact that the president now, after multiple of these musical performers and acts have decided to withdraw, the president has said, well, hey, you want to make it political? We'll go ahead and make it political. So it's going to be very interesting to see what goes on there. We are talking about a series of musical performers and acts that have decided to pull out and withdraw from the Freedom 250 event that is scheduled to start the Great American State Fair June the 25th on the National Mall in Washington, D.C. So I caught this interesting article over at Semaphore, which is an online news publication. The author's name is Ben Smith. He is the co-founder and editor-in-chief of the organization. He wrote an opinion piece about this, about the 250th anniversary, America 250 as a whole. And there's some interesting things in here. So he writes, and it's called Ben's View, the editor and one of the co-founders. He writes, I recently ran into Democratic strategist Doug Thornell, who was worried about America's 250th anniversary this July the 4th. Here's the quote from the Democrat strategist. Trump wants to make it a partisan 2 to 3 months where he can beat Democrats over the head for not being patriotic. He continued by saying, Democrats need to be ready to go on the offensive with a thoughtful vision for America, not be afraid to talk about their patriotism and their love for the country, end quote. Interesting viewpoint from a Democrat strategist. I don't know that I have heard a lot of commentary from the President of the United States or other high-ranking elected officials as of late as it relates to Democrats' lack of patriotism. I think overall, that opinion, that viewpoint has been created by the left themselves. I don't think that this is the president or anybody else beating Democrats over the head for not being patriotic. They make this clear consistently. They are always, and this again goes back to many of the vocals on the political left, constantly are talking about how much they hate the United States of America. They are constantly talking about how the very foundations of our country, our Constitution, the way in which we vote, the way in which our economic system, known as capitalism, I know, crazy, is propped up and how that works. They are constantly talking about how much all of these systems are terrible, none of them work, and how much they hate the United States because of it. I don't believe that the president has to open his mouth to make this point abundantly clear. This is going on right now, not because of President Donald Trump, because Democrats' political ideology is a religion. Because they are not in charge, they have decided that they are going to attack the United States as a whole as the result. So it's interesting to see the commentary here from a political strategist as it relates to this. Going more through the article, the author, Ben Smith, writes, I texted Trump advisor Kellyanne Conway, who is deeply involved in the anniversary preparations, to ask whether America's birthday might become hyper-partisan. She responded in a text asking, meaning many Democrats will not celebrate, ? I tried to elaborate, but she politely explained that she had been asking a rhetorical question. So even Kellyanne Conway responds with something that we all know. Why will this become, quote unquote, hyper partisan? Why? Because a bunch of musical performers have decided to withdraw from the event, one of the events taking place in Washington, D.C., because they hate Donald Trump. At the same time, one side of their mouth saying, I have to withdraw from this event. The other side of their mouth saying, I believe that music brings people together. I believe that music is the great uniter here across the United States. Those two things cannot exist in the same universe. If you truly believe that, and again, you're allowed and should have disagreements with what's going on in the United States. We have a political system in the U.S. that allows you to voice your concerns, that allows you to voice your displeasure with what's going on. And you're allowed to do that. And guess what? Every year, every other year, depending on where you live, you have the ability to vote. You have the ability to have a say in who is leading the country, what their ideology is, what their background is. If you truly believe that music brings people together, then you should, I would hope, be able to get over your own political agenda, your own political ideology, and practice what you preach. Everything that I have read, everything that I have seen points straight to the fact that Democrats, because of their Trump derangement syndrome, their hatred for the president, their hatred for Republicans, their hatred for our idea, for anything that Republicans stand for, they have once again lost the issue. They have once again lost the narrative. And they have decided, seemingly themselves, that they are going to turn this into an incredibly partisan event. That is the reality of what's going on. That is all of the information that I have. That is all that I have been able to find. It is these musical performances. And again, I don't know where their politics stand. And again, I don't particularly care. You're allowed to have an opinion, even if it's one that disagrees with mine. I mean, this is something that those on the political right, we're okay with. We're okay with people having a different opinion. We're okay with people having a different viewpoint, a different agenda, a different narrative. I don't care. I don't agree with you, but I don't hate you because of it. I don't think you shouldn't have that opinion. That the left can't say that. They think anybody that has a different viewpoint from them, even those that are on the same side of the political aisle that they are, when those individuals speak up, as I was mentioning a little while ago, we talked about yesterday in great detail, the New Jersey governor who stood up and said, hey, a bunch of out-of-town Antifa left-wing agitators have come into Newark to create chaos and commit violence at an ICE protest of the Delaney Hall ICE Detention Center. She says that. What does the crowd on the ground do? They start chanting that she is working with the Trump administration. Meanwhile, she has stated publicly time and time again, she is fighting back against said administration. It's totally illogical. But for those individuals that are of the mindset that their political agenda and their ideology is in fact their religion, and they tend to operate like that, they tend to feel like that with everything that they do, this is where it leads. So you are going to have Democrats all over the United States that are going to sit out, complain, protest. I'm sure there will be plenty. Events celebrating the 250th anniversary of the United States of America because Donald Trump is in the Oval Office. Does that not show the miserable time that we're living in? Does that not show clearly, without any doubt, where the Democrats fall right now and how deranged and out of control the Democrat Party is? You're going to protest the 250th anniversary of the nation because Donald Trump is the president. Where's the logic there? You're owning Trump? You're going to own the Republicans? No, you're just going to look like a total clown. You look like a complete moron. People all across the political spectrum celebrate and appreciate the United States of America. A lot of Democrats, too. They love the United States. They love America. They love where they were born, the opportunities that it has afforded them and their families. This is yet again another 80-20, 90-10, 95-5, whatever percentages you want to put on it. This is another one of these issues where Democrats have clearly shown that they are on the wrong side of another issue. Now, this one won't last as long as once we get through July the 4th, these events will round down pretty quickly. And of course, we'll get on with our lives and enjoy the rest of the summer. But in the lead up to this, over the next month or so, it is going to be interesting to see how much hyper-partisanship the Democrats try and bring into this and what the general American public is as this stuff continues to move forward. So I'll be keeping an eye on this as the president has now threatened to say, you know, hey, we'll just turn this into a major political rally. If that's what you guys claim is going to happen anyway, I'll go ahead and give it to you. So it's going to be very interesting to see, what happens with all of this. I inherently, right off the bat, as was planned, doesn't make sense. It doesn't need to be a political event, but I'm a big supporter of if the Democrats are going to claim that Donald Trump is going to turn this into some radical, crazy, nonsensical political event, then freaking give it to him. You guys want to claim this is happening? Fine, let's go ahead and do it. Then you can really blow your stack. Then you can really lose your mind about what's going on. Again, no evidence whatsoever that I was able to find that this event was turning or becoming political prior to Democrats announcing that they were going to, these Democrat performers announcing that they were going to drop out of the event. Final comment coming in on the show, no skin off my nose if they boycott America 250 events. It will be like a Trump rally. Happy people all together. Yeah, well, that's another problem as well. Great comment, Leslie. Democrats aren't happy. They're miserable people. The current Trump administration is dismantling all of the bullshit that they have tried to enact over the last 15 or 20 years.
They've continually lost their mind over it. They can't handle it in any way, shape, or form, and so they continue to lash out and in large part make themselves look like complete and utter morons. So I'm here. I'm all for it. I am very curious to see how this continues to play out over the next month or so. We'll in the next couple of weeks we'll get into there's a lot going on here in North Carolina as well across the state. So we'll maybe later on this week jump into some of the America 250 events that are happening here across the state, and I'll try and bring those to you coming up later on this week right here. All right, a couple things going on today. The North Carolina legislature gaveling back in for what is expected to be a very busy month of June. Committee meetings taking place all over the map today in Raleigh. We are seeing a similar situation, tomorrow as well, as lawmakers try and round out all of the business of the short session ahead of the July the 4th holiday and get back to their districts, get back to their areas in which they are elected to be with their families for July the 4th and begin the process of campaigning and raising money and doing everything that is required and necessary to get reelected coming up in November of this year. So we'll be keeping a close eye on that. And it is Decision Day in the state of California. It is Decision Day in Los Angeles, where individuals will have the opportunity to decide whether there will be a runoff election for Los Angeles. Three main candidates running in LA: Karen Bass, the current failed mayor of LA; Spencer Pratt, you've been seeing a lot about him over the last couple of weeks as well; and it's a third candidate, some radical progressive. All polling indicates that none of the three candidates will be able to meet the 50% threshold that is required to not cause a runoff election to take place in November. With that, it will be the top two vote getters that move forward to the general election in November. Again, if the data is accurate and if everything goes as it seems right now, it will be Karen Bass and Spencer Pratt that will face off in November. Unfortunately, because Los Angeles is so freaking blue and there's so many Democrats there, Bass will probably win. But the Spencer Pratt thing has really blown up across the country and could be a major kind of catalyst event driving Republicans all across the nation out to voting locations in their various municipalities. A big Wilmington City Council meeting tonight taken as well, as they're set to approve a major budget that will increase your taxes by nearly 20%. So a lot going on over the next couple of days. We'll keep you up to date. I'll do my best, I'll say, to keep you up to date with all of it right here on the Nick Craig Show. That is going to do it for a Tuesday edition. Thanks to the Law Group here in Wilmington for their continued support. LawGroupNC.com is their website. The Nick Craig Show streams live weekday mornings, 7 a.m., YouTube, Rumble, X, Facebook, is available 24/7 in your favorite podcast apps, and is heard weeknights, 9 to 10 p.m. on WBT Radio in Charlotte. Enjoy your Tuesday. We'll do it again tomorrow morning right here on The Nick Craig Show.